Ground is three-dimensional, the midground is two-dimensional, and the background is one-dimensional. So here's a diagram to illustrate that idea. So the foreground and see how this pushes back in space. It creates a sense of depth. Starting with George Bridgman, classic. We're going to end up returning to this drawing right here. So this is Bridgman. Notice how all of the shapes are not dimensional. Here's what I mean by not dimensional this way and this way, but they don't have what we might call Z space or depth. They don't have, you see how these drawings have this proportion and this proportion, but they also have this depth proportion. Today's work, we're going to look at artists and we're going to practice skills that will give us this dimension and that dimension. I want to start to memorize a basic set of moves with proportions. What are the shapes that make this thing up? Okay, so this is, I'm actually going to do this silly thing. I'm going to go Oopies. And I go boom, boom. And then let's talk about it. So this top shape here, let's divide this into 3 shapes, okay? So this shape, we could say, is very much a rectangle. And it's a long, thin rectangle. And then the other thing about this rectangle is that it tapers. So it's a tapered rectangle. We could say that the end of it is a C line. So it's 2 eyes and a C. Notice this part of it right here where it tapers back. And so we start having this shape right there. This part of the shape feels like a triangle. But what kind of augmentation is necessary for us to get this shape to really feel the way that one feels? One of the things that's going on is that the triangle is turning outwards like that. The other thing that's going on is it's being cut off. And it looks like it's a nice flat. Okay. And now let's take on this shape here. So this shape, again, feels like a triangle with a tip cut off of it. So here's the part that I'm cutting off. Here's triangle. This is made with all eye type eye lines, like remember our C, S, I. So I'm just making lines that look like an I, and this is a C, and then here, this is a C as well. And if I think of this, and I think of how far out, what's the sort of proportion outwards? Okay. And so I've got these 3 shapes kind of adding up to a paintbrush shape. And now let me see if I can think about them in proportion. So my main proportions are halves. If I think of a half, there's a half. If I think of quarters, here, I want to really mark my half. If I think of quarters, there's a quarter and there's a quarter. So those aren't really working super well for me, but perhaps thirds are going to work really nicely. Here's a third. And could that be a third? So it looks like we could almost think of this one, this particular line, the line that comes from this, as being a 1/3 line. So when we're drawing our paintbrush and we have this shape, and between here and there, when I double it, it looks like if I take this proportion and I double it, it doesn't quite get to the double. You see this little bit here? That little bit represents the 1090 to me. And then if this part represented a third right here, okay? So now I'm going to move out. I'm going to take this and go to there. 1, 2, 3. This shape is a rectangle, but it goes like this and tapers inwards, and the end of it is established by a C. Okay, and now let's take another look at this, and let's see if I said dark. And this is funny because it's super reflective. So, but what I want to do is I want to make this medium and I want to make this light. So I want to go like this. I want to go dark. And when I'm filling in the dark, see how what I'm doing kind of insinuates the brush? Okay. And so here's medium. And for medium, I want to try to be really smooth because this feels really smooth. So this feels a little bit more textured and this feels a little bit more smooth. Okay, not bad. Okay, could put in a little something like that and a little of that. And then this becomes, now that I've done this, this becomes a shape that I could play with. So I can start to memorize this shape in flat terms. Like I could just take it and put it to the side. If we think of the size of the whole thing, and let's break this thing into 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. Okay, so let's talk about proportions of parts. Let's say one part. Let's say if we have a halfway point is probably right here, maybe right here. This is definitely not a quarter. Could that be a third? Oop, that looks like a third again. So if I'm going to go boom, 2, 3, it looks like it breaks into thirds nicely. Using the halfway point to measure something, like say here, you see this 1, 2, it's not a third and it's not a halfway. So if I mark a halfway here, and I've noticed that it's not a halfway, it's like above the halfway. See how I'm using the halfway and it kind of sideways? I'm kind of, now the top of this thing, it looks like it's dominated by a triangle and perhaps a diamond. How about if I just said the top of it is kind of a diamond? Okay, this looks like a triangle. The diamond looks like it. I just caught a glimpse that it's a taller, skinnier diamond. Again, here, a rectangle. Now, how about this guy? I think that I'm going to call that guy the 1090. And I want to, here's a thing that's always hard for me, is to get from the top to the bottom of a drawing and have been in line. Okay, so let's talk about some values then. So I'm going to say this is going to be my dark value. I like for the value, I like for when I'm shading, I use the line direction to try to say something about the form. But we'll cover that more in depth. In this sense, I just wanted to adding line weight, adding line weight. So that's kind of being a middle value. And See how I can tell where this ends is here. And now look at, I want to use a C line and a C line. And because of what it is, it feels like it really wants a little point up there. And okay, let's do another drawing. I also grabbed a mug. Here's a thing we can draw. So if we take this thing, and I want to draw it right here. Okay, so the first thing that I'm thinking about is it's kind of a rectangle mixed with a triangle, right? So here's a rectangle, but it's been mixed with a triangle. The lines that I'm using to draw it are basically eye lines, basically setting up okay, now this gets a little C line right here. There's a little C line. If I take this and I measure it inwards, it looks like it goes to about half the cup. So when I come out, I'm going to need to, oopsies, I didn't leave myself enough space. I'm going to need to come to there. When I think of the distance and the distance, it's like this feels like almost quarters. And this line feels like it goes more downward and up. So that line is a quarter again. Okay. So in this instance, I've got a medium. And this is a medium too. And then this is a dark. And I can work on my line quality. Okay, giving myself a nice heavy line there. And let's draw one more thing. I've got this guy right here. Okay. So I can start out with a rough sketch of it. Like if I, instead of going through a whole process, I can just sit down and start trying to sketch it. In order to do that, I'm going to put a middle line and try and get that kind of correct. And then on the lower part, it's easily a rectangle, which is 4 eye lines. 1, 2, 3, 4 eye lines. Okay. And then another rectangle centered on this space. I can see that this one has gone heavy in that direction. And okay, another rectangle here. And a rectangle, trying to build off this center line. Obviously not doing so great. Little corrections. See how as my hand is like moving around this page, and it may seem like not that easy to understand exactly what I'm doing, but what I'm doing is I'm doing just tiny corrections here and there. Okay, and this to there. Okay, so it was a rectangle, a rectangle, a rectangle, a rectangle, a rectangle. Now, if I think about from here to there, that looks like about halfway to me. If I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it looks like each of these hits a quarter. This is like, this whole thing felt like it represented 1/2 to me. This little space right here, I'm going to give this little space like the 1090 treatment. Okay, I'm going to put a C, a flat, an I, an I. I'm going to drop this. I'm going to bring that more to a 1/2. I think that would be more correct, to bring this more to a 1/2. Again, a C, a slight C curve up, a flat with a dark line. The eye goes down. Boom, boom. Okay, here we go. Up, nice little detail. Up, nice little detail. Okay, so now it looks to me as though what I would do for this is I would make this dark. And try to be clean. I would make this dark. And again, try to be clean. I would make this dark. And this dark. Kind of like coloring book stuff here. I'm aiming for just a little bit darker. And now this, I want to make medium. Cleaning. And then I want to really clean this out. And I could put a medium right here. That's kind of fun. And perhaps gonna darken the underside lines, create some line variety. Okay. So we're practicing proportions. We're practicing lines. We're practicing shapes. We're practicing shape modification.